See, when you talk about societies, let me illustrate a story. Let us assume, that you're on a ship and there's a big ocean, and it's a vast ocean, and from the ocean we are coming ashore. We're coming ashore onto the beach, and then there's a desert. Plenty of space. Nobody lives there, and we are not seeing anybody there. And we enter the desert. We enter the beach and then the desert. Vast land, vast stretches of land and desert. Walk in further and further and further, and slowly start some sign of civilization. 2 or 3 people herding sheep. Shepherds, very, very sparsely populated. Maybe a family or 2 every kilometer, with large livestock, sheep, camels. You move further and further, slowly the population becomes 25 families within a kilometer. Then you will see fencing. We call this farmhouse. So civilization has begun. Yet the land value is in acres. Per acre it costs X amount of money, X unit of money per acre. And move further, and slowly the population becomes denser, and every 100 meters, every 100 square meters there is a fence, and there are huge large houses, villas, bungalows. And you go further, move further into the population, and slowly the population is more dense. People have come together, and when you go further and further, the value of the land is more expensive, and there is a more organized way of distribution of resources of the land, of water and of electricity. And slowly the population becomes very dense, that we start creating houses in vertical buildings, in flats. There's no more farmhouses. Things are very expensive. And slowly a social order comes to place. We start calling it a society, where the population is living just beside each other. The neighborhood is very densely populated, and slowly there comes scarcity, experience of scarcity. There's scarcity for land resource, there's scarcity of other things that's required. And slowly civil obedience, rule of law, etc. has to be created, because the interaction, if driven by fear, by greed, by lack, a sense of shortage, then obviously there will be a overdrive in each person to accumulate wealth. Anxiety develops. All this were not visible as you came ashore from the ocean, because there the people experienced abundance of everything. There was abundant land, abundant livestock, abundant water, and the population was not densely populated. People lived with vast stretches of land in their ownership. So slowly began an experience of lack as we come together. And this drive to come together is there in people. They just want to come together, and slowly begins entanglements. Slowly begins more attachment to comforts, and accumulation of comforts, and behavior changes from giving out of abundance to start worrying about shortage. And this is the property of intellect, memory, mind and ego. So slowly now, how to establish, how to maneuver harmoniously through this interaction between 2 people who are driven out of the properties of intellect, memory, mind, ego, which is established in experience of shortage. So then we need rules of behavior, code of conduct, civil obedience patterns, and we need implementing authorities, and we need to understand how to restrict people from overreaching into other people's comfort zones, other people's land or resources. So slowly comes into force disciplinarian force, a kind of people who are trained to implement the discipline, and then starts somebody to give verdict on who is right, who is wrong, judgments, and starts the beginning of society, a social order. Now, once the social order is in place and the interests of each of them begins evolving, becomes discovered, they bring about a special lifestyle, a special language very specific to this community, a language, a tradition, a culture. Then they start overvaluing their culture. They start overvaluing the tradition that has come in place as a result of this coming together of people and creation of a social order, a system, a civic system, perhaps even a system of life and prayers or education or behavior or understanding how to relate to each other, behavioral patterns. So now there's a need inherently to protect these things. So anything outside the system becomes threat to this society, which has evolved into a specific social order. So now they bring laws to keep away intruders. They do not want intrusion into their system because now they have a comfort zone, and they teach each other the skill set to live in this specific system, specific language, specific tradition, culture, its history, its plan for the future, its disciplines, etc., etc. And now they need to protect it. So anybody coming into that becomes an intruder. So that intruder needs to be profiled, needs to be scanned, needs to be studied, and then needs to be taught how to behave into the system. So as such, another town, if you imagine, they have their own systems, their own social order, their own demography, and they evolve a new system, another system that becomes a different society. Now that society also experiences threat perceptions from this society to their way of life, their way of eating, etc. And slowly that society starts creating a wall, a boundary against this society. So suddenly two societies now start evolving, having their own boundaries, their own system of keeping away intrusion from the other society. So slowly boundaries starts coming in place, and slowly a sense of lack, which was a sense of abundance, translates itself into a sense of lack and scarcity, worries, tensions. So the solution is to go back to the source, to start understanding how it all began, how the people had to come together, but the coming together was overvalued, overestimated. Its value was overestimated, that wisdom became undervalued. And slowly the coming together turned into entanglement, attachment, greed, and when greed comes, there's jealousy. Now the solution is to undo many of these things, undo the flaws of coming together. And that is where, now obviously you can't go back all the way out of the society, you can't go back out of the comfort into the farmhouse and then to the desert and then to the ocean. Now that recourse is not encouraged or not recommended. Then the recourse is to go inward, because we have to create a new dimension for people to rejuvenate, to go back to rejuvenate, to get connected with the source, where there was abundance, where there were no sense of lack, which was free from entanglement, which was very independent, self-reliant, and they would look within for comfort, where you could take refuge from within and not depend on external comforts to give you refuge, to give you support. So this requires some meditative practices. This requires to energize oneself, to come out of the grip of intellect, memory, mind, ego complex. It requires stamina and strength to de-link from the ignorance that has gripped us as a social order perhaps. And yet we need to de-link from it through meditation, through breathing techniques, through pranayama, through stretches of the body to create awareness and energize our system. So once you do that, though the boundaries and social order and norms and policies and rules, etc. are in place, yet we can experience an immense freedom in getting connected with something within. This inward journey is very essential, more essential as we have come into a social order. So We need to graduate out of a sense of scarcity back into a sense of abundance, because things are abundant. There is adequate energy, only we need to become aware of it. This journey to rediscover oneself begins with meditative practices, and there the society has to evolve into recognizing the importance of a mentor or a guru to take the society forward and to rearrange the walls between one society with the other, and merger of many social systems so that one can connect at a very higher level of existence.